Hey everybody, once more it is Icy Dice, and today I'm back with another video. This time, evidently, I am on the Two Sentence Horror Reddit. Two Sentence Horror Reddit is obviously a subreddit where people post short horror stories composed of two or fewer sentences, and I wanted to kind of check out a few of the top ones that have been posted over this week to kind of gauge the quality of these stories and maybe discuss a little bit what the state of two sentence horror is currently. I might still have a stuffy voice, but hopefully it's clearing up. At this point, I have taken more medication. I should be good in the next couple of days. But let's not turn that into too much of a distraction. Let's just jump right into it. This post by Anarchy Activist, the Mayan 2020, the Mayans 2012 calendar, was it a prophecy of the world ending? It was a strong suggestion. Okay, this is pretty decent. So the implication of this is that the world should have ended in 2012 because things would get worse. I mean, arguably, the irony there is that it has in 2020 and forward years, things have really started to fall into chaos. So I would say this is actually pretty decent. There's an interesting setup because it's drawing onto something that had a lot of attention, especially back in the day. And the second sentence actually feels pretty unique. It doesn't seem very derivative of anything that I've seen. Um, and so I would say that this one is pretty decent. I'd say it deserves this rating that it has right now. But let's check out some other ones and see if they quite hold up to the quality of that one. Oh boy. After the Christian rapture happened to everyone's considerable shock, those left behind and those born to them after all had a strange unremovable marking appear on their foreheads. It took decades to translate, but the result was horrifying. Do not harvest, not fit for consumption. I'm gonna read some of the comments to see. I am not sure what this one exactly means. Um, it is inspired by the notion that to a lobster in a restaurant's tank, being chosen might mean something entirely different. Oh, okay, I see. So the rapture is actually a harvest event, similar to that of when we select a lobster from a water tank. That's pretty cool. I actually think that's pretty cool. For a religious one, that's a unique spin somewhat. The idea of scripture and religion actually being a trick and that there are malicious intentions behind it isn't one that's so new. But I think that this is okay. We got plenty of bang for our buck in this one. I'm actually pleasantly surprised with the first two. I'm used to these not being too good. Being blind, I have to rely on how my husband sounds during sex to know how he's feeling. I was wondering why I wasn't hearing much from him during our session. Then I froze when I heard his voice calling me downstairs. Okay, this is pretty fucked up. I guess there's an intruder that she's having sex with, which has some pretty evil implications. So that's decently fucked up. Yeah, I would say that one's more disturbing than scary. But so far, these are fairly decent. Let's check out another one by Endless Cosmic Horror. I reluctantly agreed to this new thing my partner was so eager for me to try. A few hours later, sitting in the ER, feeling tiny claws scrabbling in my lower intestines, I don't know what I'm going to tell the doctor. This one I don't get. Let's see if any of the comments. Oh no, they put the cat up his ass. Oh, and OP is just running with the joke. Okay, good on the OP for running with the joke. I don't understand this one. It feels like here's like a flaw with some two sentence horror stories that I think is apparent in this one. There's not enough context, and that's a very dangerous thing that two sentence horror poses as a challenge. Is that when you're very limited on how many words you can get out there, how many descriptions you can get out there, sometimes you just end up with a story that lacks too much context. So this can be interpreted in any way because this is relatively vague. We don't know what's inside of this person's lower intestines. We don't know what this partner wanted this person to try. It feels like there's too much of a gap between the first sentence and the second sentence. I'm not necessarily sure how I would fix this, but I do think that's a flaw within this story. But I can appreciate the attempt. Honestly, I can. Let's check out some of the newer ones. I wonder what people are writing that's new. If it'll load, of course. Come on, any day now. What? No way. Well, this is interesting. So apparently, I am all out of internet, I guess. Let me try. There we go. There we go. Back to the internet. Let's see, by Jake, Jacke 7494. Oh my gosh, Alex, I haven't seen you in like 20 years, she exclaimed, inviting me to her place for drinks to catch up. After a few drinks, when the drugs began to consume her, I leaned into her ear and whispered, I don't know who Alex is, but thanks for being so easy. I think my problem with this one is that the concept is fairly disturbing. Of course, drugging somebody in this manner is a very scary reality that a lot of people face. But it's so blunt and obvious here that you're just kind of introduced to it immediately and you're like, oh, okay. And I think that it loses some of its impact that way. I think it's better when you have to think about it for a moment and then come to a conclusion and you're like, oh. But that's not really something that's present here. All right. I started to crap after the Taco Bell. Yeah, some of these posts are just blatantly jokes. I shot a man and he screamed, cried, and begged for his wife. So I tried the head. Somebody watched Avengers Infinity War. Always got to go for the head. Some of these are just jokes because people don't really take the subreddit too seriously, which is understandable, I guess. It's always funny to troll a little bit. The submersible was instructed to make periodic stops during its venture to the ocean floor, allowing the crew to acclimate to the pressure change. When radioing in to ask why we hadn't stopped descending for over an hour, there was no response. Okay. Um, I guess they just lost connection. It's not really too. It's a horrifying idea, but in execution, there's not really much of an oomph factor. There's not really much of a shock factor to that one. Yeah. Let's see. We'll try one or two more. Come down from your room. Dinner is ready. Very simple premise. Let's see where it goes. It said as I watched it from the closet, eating my mother's gut, slowly changing its body shape to match hers. So this one is very similar in concept to a very famous short horror story called A Mother's Call, in which the story goes that a little girl heard her mother call her downstairs for dinner, but on her way there, the actual mother pulled her into a closet and said, I heard it as well, uh, implying some kind of supernatural intruder. This one takes that concept, but is way less subtle about it. I mean, eating my mother's gut, it feels like that's there for the shock, but it's again so abrasive and so blunt that it doesn't really work. We'll try this one more. Your life is a living hell as you are constantly haunted by vengeful ghosts trying to avenge their murders. Then again, you can't say you're surprised that they mistook you for your twin brother. Everyone else does after all. Yeah, again, and I think you could say this for most of these stories. Uh, the premise is more interesting than the execution. It's like my reaction to this is just, oh, okay. I guess that makes sense as a twist. It's not like I'm having a holy shit moment. You know what I mean? And I think that that's a flaw of many of these stories. Again, we checked out some of the top ones from this week, and the top ones were actually pretty good. I was fairly surprised, pleasantly surprised, by how good the top ones were. But some of these new ones just aren't it. And I think that that's because a lot of amateur writers fall into the pitfalls of two-sentence horror. It's not easy to make two-sentence horror because you have to have an interesting premise and a jaw-dropping twist, essentially. Because in short format horror, you're leaving out so much of what would normally be in a horror story. You don't have time to make us care about the characters. You don't have time to really set up disturbing imagery. So you really are reliant on that interesting premise and that twist. And so when people go into two sentence horror, they really try to compact all the disturbing elements into something really, really, straightforward in an attempt to shock you. Like they'll say, I came home from work after my wife called me, only to find her decapitated body next to the phone. And it's like you understand why they do that because they also know that you have to shock the audience in a very compact way, but they go about it without understanding that that twist has to be subtle. Because as I said earlier, it is more impactful and more scary to have to think about the twist for a few seconds and then have that revelation, that mental double take essentially. But what I have to say to all these people, aside from the trolls, of course, is to keep going, keep trying your best. To the people at the top, you guys have earned it. Keep on producing quality two sided horror. I'm very excited to see where this subreddit goes. It's a very popular subreddit. You can see the amount of members and the amount of people online. So this Reddit is not hurting at all in terms of popularity, and for good reason, because the draw of two sided horror is obvious. We sometimes don't want to read full length stories. And so we look for those micro miniature horror experiences. And when they're good, they're really good. So if you guys enjoyed this video, do leave a like below. If you guys want to comment what your favorite two-sentence horror stories are, or maybe even comment some two-sentence horror stories that you've made, feel free to do so. If you want to see more content from me, be sure to subscribe. My name is Icy Dice, and I will see you in the next video.